First of all, if Elon is asking for 16-hour workflow, he's working like 22 hours a day.
But selfishness is negative.
People who want to work 16 hours a day would do it even without paycheck because that's what their passion and that's what they want to do for them.
But I would say it's a symbiosis at that point. If the parasite's in your head, you can't take it out. You take it out, you die.
Hello and welcome to the fifth episode.
This is the fifth one.
Yeah, the fifth one. Beyond the Algorithm, part 2 of the transhumanism question.
Yeah, so we have like 2 to 3 questions that we would like to discuss if we have enough time. The first one is, will human enhancement widen inequality to an irreversible degree, creating genetic billionaires or biopoor classes?
I think we start with you, Arsha. This was a question that you proposed, and it's one that I think we've discussed at great length in our chats over coffee on campus. But
Yes.
let's start with you. What are your thoughts?
So I would say as other like markets, like enhancement markets for humans behave in some sort of like capitalism. So it's like early, expensive, maybe captured by elites first. So like there are different scenarios. The first one is like billionaires would take brain-computer interfaces and they would enhance themselves. And then we have like bio-poor middle class. Or there would be like B scenario, which is just they try to kind of democratize this enhancement.
Elevate the human species rather than elevating themselves
exactly.
first.
So I think we should look at like both perspectives.
Well, let's take the first then, because I think this is probably... I'm not sure how many of us would agree with this, but certainly from my perspective, it seems more likely that instead of practicing true altruism, which is a whole other question that we can discuss at some point.
Yeah.
But rather than practicing altruism, what history tells us is innovation is driven by what can provide us with an advantage, be that evolutionary or be that in the context of, geopolitical affairs. Now, in that regard, these bits of technology which have been developed thus far seem to be incredible products with a huge scope for both human improvement, human augmentation, and also the healing of many of the ails which we now suffer with. So let's take this first case. Do you think it's plausible that the brain-computer interfaces, along with all the other spheres, because I know that transhumanism, we need to specify, isn't just BCIs, it's also CRISPR baby design and genetic editing, gene editing, not just the brain-computer interface side of things. Do you think that these technologies will perhaps lead our modern elites to a new echelon, really a new tier of kind of untouchable power, wealth, and consolidation of control?
Yeah. I don't
that would have been my answer.
Do I think? I don't think I'm in a place to actually say what I think, but I can say different arguments in my mind, and then we can decide which one is the one that we want to go for.
Let's just go for let's start with your logical intuition. The way it's being developed at the moment, the people who are developing it at the moment, the investors behind it, many of these technologies are invested in by the Silicon Valley venture capital funds, including Peter Thiel's Founders Fund and Bill Gates's funds. These are not people, I think we would agree, these are not people who at their forefront of priority hold humanity.
I'm sure Bill Gates is not for humanity. But Peter Thiel, I don't think he's for people, he's for product. he's extremely intelligent in a way that he wants to proceed the human enhancement for the sake of just exploring rather than, giving benefit to humans, I would say, at this point. But if we want to look at all the investments in Silicon Valley, Peter has been involved like in all investments regarding Neuralink and all the other companies, Chinese companies, developing like BCIs or neural bands. My intuition would be we have no choice of allocating resources because we don't have enough resources as like individuals to develop these kinds of chips or BCIs. I would say that's why we don't see many startups doing BCIs. It's just big corps or like big venture capitalists behind these, which is the concerning point.
And I think we'd both agree that like the consolidation of resource under a government would necessitate a shared vision and a visionary leader leading humanity to a better and brighter future, which is rarely what we see in the reality of governance and politics.
Yeah. So what would be the solution? What do you think? How can we actually reallocate the mission and the people behind, like in power behind these enhancements?
I think this is if we put in the word equality, inequality, it's going to be a question of maybe you could say the success of society, or like because some people are way more successful, hence they're billionaires. We could put it in that perspective, and some people are really poor, whatever. So then, and what's going to drive this inequality? Right now, BCIs, transhumanism, whatever we're going to use to enhance features of a human to make them better, maybe generating more wealth, whatever. It's almost, or pretty much a question of tool use. How are we going to use the tools?
Yeah, and I think on top of that as well, we need to move it away from a relativist's perspective on the planet to a more objective approach, insofar as if we were to establish exactly what equality meant and what was important to be equal. So, as an example, the rights afforded to a human, and where those rights come from, whether or not they are inalienable or just a couple of rights that the Geneva Convention or EU Parliament decides are afforded to us. I think that shared vision will help establish the necessary checks and balances to ensure that such a technology, which I don't disagree, is going to be developed right now by much larger mega corporations and very, very, very wealthy individuals. I think that these checks and balances would provide, if done correctly, a clear path which doesn't hinder innovation, but puts humanity at the forefront of that innovation, and also ensures that we're not turning around and creating a wholly captured market.
It's such a hard problem to solve because I don't see any paths to...
Come on, Arsha, I know you're more optimistic than this.
I'm the most optimistic person here, but...
Why?
Yeah, besides you, but here is just, it's so hard to develop these technologies without having power and resources.
Oh, for sure.
Because we've been talking about this, Daniel, like this morning, all the surgeries done to implement like Neuralink chip, all those devices, we can't like make those devices ourselves as like a small group of people or engineers or scientists.
No. Well,
somehow we have to
not
have
at present.
Yeah, but what's the path to be able to obtain that power?
Energy abundance, I think, is one of the paths that we need to really pursue, because with energy to spare, rather than where we are presently, certainly in the country that we live at the moment, the UK has one of the highest energy, electricity, anyways, costs in the world. if we were to give people the wiggle room that energy abundance would afford, because energy abundance affects our entire supply chain. Energy abundance would affect logistics. It would affect our ability to farm. It would affect our ability to then develop these new innovations. Energy abundance would bring with it a reduction in the cost of living crisis that we see today. If we provided people the wiggle room necessary, there are a lot of brilliant minds who could be developing startups and who could be working on this in such a manner that they don't rely on certain individuals or certain individuals' funds for the necessary capital to go away and develop these things. Don't get me wrong, surgeries like the one that you've spoken of, the Neuralink surgery and the Neuralink brain chip, these are not cheap devices.
Yeah.
They're not cheap to design and engineer, and they're certainly not cheap to implement.
And this brings the inequality.
Well, look, we all have laptops. We all have a smartphone. It wasn't like this 50 years ago.
Yeah.
No.
So
no.
right now it's going to be really hard for us to think if we wanted to put a chip in. Oh, I mean, not all of us can have that. The resources, the money, and the energy, whatever.
Yeah,
But
we'll
50,
filter.
maybe 100 years' time, maybe even 10 years' time, it could be available. So it won't be a question of who has it or who has access to it, but maybe just who can enable the full capacity of the tool.
Yeah.
And is that transparency? It's like with the AI thing now, is it driving more inequality? Well, maybe the ones that properly know how to use it, the ones that are right behind crafting this tool, they know how to like best harness its powers. Therefore, they can generate more, whatever, cash or success.
Yeah.
And yeah, there you go. They're going to be billionaires, and people are going to be even poorer because they don't even know how to use the technology.
Well, not only will people not know how to use it, but I think access is unlikely to be unlimited, because access to this type of tool, we normally see information is power. We see that like in intelligence communities and within any discussion around government development, be that of tools of war or tools of surveillance, this all hinges around a government's knowledge of their opponents, and their opponents are no longer, I think we need to move away from the simplistic idea that this one nation is somehow a wrongdoer, and move into the realization that actually the work that the states have done ever since the Patriot Act was implemented, Patriot Act and the Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act of 1994 in the States, the population is treated with more than a degree of suspicion. Like we need to understand that we aren't looked on with this benign and benevolent care of a ruler. We are looked on with, I would say contempt. Like I would say that the lack of transparency in governments across the board, but especially governments in the West, only from my own research and knowledge, the lack of transparency around things like the Epstein files, or the lack of transparency around Palantir's integration into police systems here in the UK. Like, transparency is not at the forefront of these people's priorities or minds. And without transparency, I think that this stratification of knowledge and the understanding that knowledge and enhanced, augmented capability to process that knowledge, the understanding that this is power, will bring with it an understanding that these tools, whether or not they are distributed to the public, will be distributed in a stratified manner.
So should we like lower down the enhancement, like slowing down the human enhancement, or not? To be like more cautious, giving like an ethical framework to develop these things? Should we slow down?
Well, let me get onto that in a sec, because I think that brings a whole series of questions with it that I want to
have a lot of
discuss.
questions, yeah.
But I noticed that Perry wanted to jump in on the previous point. So,
Yes.
Perry, how do you see brain-computer interfaces, CRISPR, genetic editing, and transhumanism generally affecting equality across the board?
Well, I think it's going to be a tool because, evolution already chooses the strongest. So the strongest, the better, the most adaptable, the smartest. And when you get that kind of power, it just speeds it up. Like it, you will have so much power in comparison to the poorer people. Like the rich will have so much power, and it just speeds that up, which gives them even more power. And what I'm thinking is that every time the tougher the situation, it's the harder to survive. So always the genetically superior or the smarter or the, I don't know, you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
So do you think like evolution chooses even like the inorganic enhanced beings or just organic ones? Because that's like a question of natural selection.
Well, all depends on how much power and how much does it have good impacts or bad impacts on the capability of humanity. Like, for example, if you put a chip in yourself, would it make you less likely to have children?
Okay.
Or like if it makes you taller, stronger, I don't know.
Then I would
smarter.
be chosen by
Yeah,
evolution.
it would naturally be chosen, and the poorer ones will obviously have harder time to get to that point.
Yeah, I think like evolution. Evolution is, I think, less of a conscious being choosing who precedes and who doesn't, and more just an expression of success. How successful are you at surviving and adapting? Yeah. And I think Perry raises an excellent point that such an existential change to our makeup and our control over our makeup really would reframe the question of those who engaged in transhuman technologies and tools and those who didn't. It would reframe their relationship more similarly to, this is something Charles Rubin brings up in a brilliant essay, which again will be in the description. Please read it. Yeah. It would reframe that relationship more similarly to the relationship between single-celled bacteria and humans now. Because these single-celled organisms just do not have the capability to process the information that we have. In the same way that such drastic steps in the increase of our capacity to process information, which we haven't processed before, individually, would mean that those who had chosen to engage with these tools would have a far higher chance of survival and adaptation than those who didn't.
Okay, then answer this question, because I think there's a controversy in your
Yeah,
argument.
fire.
Yeah.
I've not even started my argument.
Should we slow down human enhancement as a democratic society? Yes or no, then your argument. And the reason why I'm asking is just to give like some time to come up with like an ethical framework and like justice to develop these chips. So we need to like not hindering the innovation, but slowing down on these.
Well, I'm of two minds. I think that slowing down any innovation seems to be impractical, and within a capitalist market economy, which is, I guess, what we live in now, even that's kind of questionable.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. In the world in which we live, I think competition and growth scientific growth, technological growth towards greater understanding is hugely important, both for our survival and also for the enhancement of our understanding of the world around us, which I think whether or not we believe ourselves to be created by an intelligent designer or are just this strange point in the universe where it has afforded itself the ability to experience itself.
Yeah.
Whether or not we are either of the two, we have this unique position where we are reflecting on the world around us, and increasing our ability to engage with it and understand it, I think is certainly a net positive, a really beautiful and brilliant thing. However, and this is where I guess the no argument comes in, our approach to technological advancement, I think we would all agree, far outstrips in its pace our desire to grow as a society and a species. I say society, civilization, and a species towards a better and brighter future. I think that we develop technologies for the sake of developing technologies, thinking that technological progress necessarily converges with humanity's progress. Where I think this is where we were discussing this earlier, a differentiation must be made. Technological progress might be technological progress, but it might be humanity's regression.
It's not necessarily aligned with human.
No, and until we come to a more healthy position where we as a civilization have, as an example, a universal regard for the dignity of human life, which I don't think we have at all at the moment, the development of these technologies, for the sake of these technologies, risks completely ignoring their impact.
Yeah, it's like what
person
for?
to person. Yeah, exactly.
Why am I like technology is it's a means.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's this medium, that will take us towards the goal of becoming better.
Yeah, for sure.
So doing it for the sake of it's fun or whatever, that's where it can get messy. But if it's really embedded in a solid goal, like this will make humanity better, then for sure, I'm all for technology.
That's
Yeah,
why-
but well, it's like it's defining that goal though. What is better? What is
Yeah.
better for us?
Yeah.
Because some people would say that what would be better for us would be not to exist. I mean, there are many people who have turned around and called us the cancers of the earth. And don't get me wrong, we treat it with disregard. We absolutely do. Like the single-use plastics, the complete disregard for like our waste systems,
Yeah.
and just the way that we pillage nature. Yeah, it's evident that we don't act with a great deal of care. And before I let Perry jump in, I think it's worth also bringing up another essay written by Haldane in 1923. I think it's actually a speech he gave at Cambridge. It's the foreword to the essay says something along the lines of a speech delivered to the heretics at Cambridge. I'm not sure who he's terming the heretics, but he asked himself this same question, worked to address this same question as to whether or not we should halt scientific progress, whether or not it's beneficial to humanity to halt scientific progress. And the essay is brilliant. Again, I would highly recommend reading. But he brings in an argument from Samuel Butler, who had this vision of man becoming a mere parasite of machinery, is exactly what he said, an appendage to the reproductive system of huge and complicated engines, which will successively usurp his activities and end by ousting him from the mastery of this planet. This might just be my perspective, but I don't think that's a better future for humanity. Becoming a parasite on a machine, a dependency on a machine, that is not a better, brighter future for humanity. Some might argue it's a better, brighter future for this planet. I would disagree. Again, that's probably a topic for another episode because that gets into the stuff of what gives us value. But what I've said previously about like this dignity afforded to us for our hybrid nature, whether or not you're Catholic or Christian and believe us to be this strange hybrid where we're between the angels and God because of the way we've walked with our Creator, or you're wholly coming at this from an atheist perspective, where we are just this strange inflection point in the universe, where all of a sudden the universe has stumbled or perhaps ordered itself in such a way that it's now able to experience itself. The gift of experience and the gift of our ability to reflect and enjoy beauty is something which affords humanity a dignity which I think is innate to us. And with that in mind, a future without humanity, I think, needs to be regarded by the entire species with apprehension and sadness, rather than looking forward to our eventual demise. Certainly not accelerating it. That would be... So yeah. I don't think that we should be working to hinder innovation, hinder progress in a technological sphere, but we need to be working on aligning it to what is progress for humanity, not just what's progress for the machines. And on that front, before we continue to develop machines that put our species at risk, we need to ask ourselves, what is best for us?
Yeah, you're right. But the question I have to raise here is that I believe that humanity has to enjoy beauty, see the beauty in the world until it understands, and see beauty in unity between each other and all that. But what I need to ask is that how do we make the selfishness of the human less powerful to the compared to the unity and the
how do we overcome the selfishness that is inherent in humanity for a better, brighter vision? Before I set Daniel on this one, because I'm very interested to hear your thoughts, Daniel. This is actually weirdly where I kind of agree with the transhumanist way of thought, which is a certain amount of, and this I say to a certain extent because I don't agree with them fully here, but I do think there is something to be said of the dignity afforded to the human person in their ability to overcome their self, their present position. Mm-hmm. And I think past the transhumanist outlook on life, someone who isn't, I think we would just naturally term that as discipline. How do we incentivize discipline? And this is where I think a lot of work can be done, because we see that if we discipline ourselves in the way that we eat, in the way that we live day to day, we can already augment ourselves. We can become fitter, stronger, healthier, happier creatures without tools.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Discipline is very important. But look at the reality today. Like even Elon, who has like done amazing things in technology and science and all that, is basically just using engineers, needs those engineers, those PhD students, those people who work 16 hours a day, every day, in a week, and they just put all that effort and energy in. They lose their youth, they lose their...
Do they?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of disagreement around this table.
Okay.
First of all,
Let Perry finish.
Please, enlighten us.
Give me some water.
Like,
Wait.
they put so much energy. Like, you guys just started engineering, but when...
hydrogen.
But you will see that in like 3 years, 4 years, you just do it to survive, to just get ahead, to be there. Like always, the ones that need to be better the ones that are from kind of poorer countries, the ones that are born in a very conservative families, those are the people who will put so much effort in that, in engineering, in work, in everything. So if everyone has enough control, if everyone has enough control, and we have some power while because we have some technologies for the transhumanism and all that cyborg thing. If everyone has those, why would people actually put their energy to put that much energy into developing for the good and for the you know what you said?
Yeah, for the betterment of mankind.
Yeah.
Let's start with Archer.
Okay,
I
yeah,
think there's a lot to unpack. So let's make sure that we address each point, huh?
Yeah.
Because
Just remind me the points if I just.
well, I think there's a question about work wasting youth away
That was the
in
first
hard labor.
Okay.
And I say hard labor, like engineering, like long hours, and it is for sure
Yeah,
true
hard labor, yeah.
that definitely takes time. And time is your most precious asset. So there's that needs to be addressed. And then there's Perry's root question, which is how do you incentivize work not just for the individual, but work towards the betterment of humanity within a context which still incentivizes that individual to work?
So first of all, if Elon is asking for 16-hour workflow, he's working like 22 hours a day himself. So it's not like the man sitting there.
He's a businessman. He works in
Don't
business.
call him a businessman. He's a technologist. He's an engineer. It's like calling like startup founder a businessman. It's like an insult to us because we need the resources. We always say in a book, The Hard Things About Hard Things. I think you've read it, right?
No.
By Ben Horowitz, one of the best VCs in Silicon Valley. He still has that human side. That's why I say. And Mark Anderson as well. He says like people, product, profit. Okay, so we need the profit. So we are businessmen, but it's not like we don't do anything other than just making profit. So we need the profit to make the mission happen. That's the first thing. The other one is if someone doesn't want to work towards a technological advancement that aligns with humans, flourishing. That's like the individual. That's not moral in an individual level. So you have to actually ask yourself that question: why you're not working 16 hours? And they have a good paycheck as well. Like Elon's paying them a lot, like 200K salary a year. It's not a normal thing for an engineer to receive. So that would be the first
May I
thing.
reply to that?
Yeah, for sure. Go on.
Yeah. I mean, I like working 16 hours a day. It's not the problem that you guys don't like it. But how many people like you have you met? Like that are willing to study so hard, work so much, and just for the goodness of humanity, and not go into quant to make some money.
Okay, I think here there's perhaps a misunderstanding of my point, which is not that they wouldn't work for the betterment of themselves, but they work in such a way that the betterment of themselves aligns with the betterment of humanity. Because it's in working in that alignment that not only are you gratifying yourself with successful and meaningful work for you, you can also turn around and say, I have worked, and my life's work has been for the next generation, for my children. And that is not something everyone can say. Certainly a lot of the financiers, and I'm sure a lot of them do good work, but we need to work to that alignment, because in terms of how many people that we know who are very happy to work 16-hour days and work that hard, just because we see at this point in time a big growth in desire for quick and easy money, does not mean that that's the right way forwards.
Yeah,
I think work
it's not the right way.
gratifies an existence, and I think that on top of that, we've seen a real death in parenting. And you turn around and you ask the question, well, why is our generation so averse to hard work? Well,
Is it
maybe-
just our generation? It's like all humanity. You look behind and you see 90% of people were selfish.
well, okay. Look at.
I mean,
look,
I'm just
look, look
making
at,
up the
look at those.
statistics.
Look at those.
Obviously.
Look at this First and Second World Wars. You had a lot of people who wanted to sign up to fight for their country. That's an immense sacrifice. Those men paid a huge price, and there was a very harrowing interview recently with a veteran who's still alive from the Second World War, who was asked if he thought it was all worth it, and he turned around and said no. He turned around and said, like, if the boys I fought for could see the UK today, they wouldn't have died for their country. They would be disgusted, and their sacrifice has been disgraced. So I think, like, it's not all generations. You see generations. Don't get me onto the classical side of things, but in Homer's Odyssey, they speak of this golden age of men, this age of demigods. This, and you constantly see the modern generation turning and criticizing itself. In the context of its forebears, eulogizing its forebears. And you see this again in like Pliny, I think it was Pliny the Younger, who wrote with disdain about the death of education and the death of oration. And you look at that and you look at us now and you think, goodness, how far have we come? But yeah, I don't want to monopolize this conversation because there's a lot that I could speak to. A lot of points that you've raised. I'm interested, though, to hear Daniel's take on the same questions that Arsha has provided a response to. Did you finish your response?
I don't remember anymore.
Well, you'd spoken about employment, but perhaps we hadn't got to the question of incentivizing the betterment of the human species.
Yeah, I mean, that comes to like having like visionary leaders, and that's like a simple answer.
And
Just
morals.
And morals.
And
as well.
morals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just try to tell like the employees and people that there is a mission in long term, and we are like there's a plan towards that. I think that would be like the simplest way to make them work towards something, make them work hard towards something that NVIDIA has been doing in a great way in the last like 2-3 decades with a visionary founder like Jensen. I think Elon is one of the visionary ones. He's more product oriented now, but he's still one of the visionary ones.
It's always hard to see with these people
Yeah.
where exactly their priorities lie. But Daniel, the question on, I guess, gratification in employment first, and then your thoughts on how we align ourselves to that betterment.
With gratification and employment, I think...
Or gratification in work, perhaps that's
Yeah, I think it's...
better framed.
It falls under your own preferences and your whatever your values are. If you choose to work 16 hours a day and that brings complete fulfillment and that's all you want to do, you've studied your life for it, you see yourself doing it, then please go on and do it. You get a healthy paycheck, you work with the brightest minds in the world. It's like a win-win in every possible way. And to take away that like to take away any value of their life and say, oh, you don't have a life, you're not doing anything, you're just working. No, that is their life. There's nothing to say. There's no one there to say that's not a life. It is.
Yeah,
it
for sure.
actually just is. Like, and if they choose to do so, if that gives them the best fulfillment, then please, like, do it.
Yeah, but most people don't want to.
Well, okay.
They
That's the
choose
problem.
yes.
That's
So
the problem.
if they choose to do it, then please do it. If they're forced to do it, then maybe, then we have to start questioning things.
Yeah,
So of course, people don't want to be working 16 hours a day, and to say most people that don't want to do it is, I don't know.
People who want to work 16 hours a day would do it even without paycheck because that's what their passion and that's what they want to do for them. That's their
Sure, and-
whole personality. Not whole personality, whole mission.
But I mean, this supports what Daniel's saying, and I think that at its core, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about the prioritization here. Like
Yeah.
where
Autonomy.
where you put your priorities. So I want to have a family, which means if I wanted to go work for SpaceX, I would do that whilst I was single, because I recognize the time commitment and I would love to work those immensely long hours, be with these people who are at the forefront of this innovation,
Yeah.
the greatest minds applying themselves, like the amount that I could learn. But I want a family, so I don't want to work 16-hour days my entire life, because I do want to be present for my children too. So sorry, Daniel.
Yeah,
didn't
I
mean to-
heard it's fine. Good. I heard there was a guy who worked in SpaceX for Elon, and he was so burnt out. Family, kids.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm not even seeing my son or my child. So he pulled out and he went to spend time with his son. And he was thinking, gosh, I really like to work and just burn myself out, and just it's so exhilarating. So he went back and he worked for Elon. So there you go.
yeah.
Like, so
Priorities.
yeah, that sums up my answer to that. In terms of human goodness, I would like to pose the question: how far should we extend our sort of orientation to goodness? Is it just human goodness, or is it goodness like universal goodness? So that's a little difficult to like try and quantify, but yeah, with this whole transhumanism thing, are we doing a good for like the entirety of the universe?
Yeah.
It's like that's the question. It's not, let's not just focus on humanity here. Is this
That makes it easier to answer then.
Yeah.
If it's universal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's universal in many ways, I think it does make it easy to answer. But I'm going to pull you back, because I want an answer on how you think we best align personal incentive with civilizational species incentive, like the betterment of you and the betterment of your community and the betterment of humanity. How do you think we go about aligning that?
incentives are a little difficult. They are a really good way to align people, but it can also be applied negatively. So I spoke to my professor about this, and he gave me a situation in Colombia where there are like people that are wanted. So like whoever finds them and
Yeah.
brings them in gets a prize, gets some money. So people were actually just killing the homeless people and then bringing them in and say, oh, it was this guy.
Yeah,
And then they
yeah.
get the incentives. Oh, but that surely we can tell is morally wrong.
Yeah,
So
for
we
sure.
would have to find another way to align incentives through other moral frameworks.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the difficult bit. Yes, you have incentives, but also choosing the right moral frameworks to work on. That is the difficult part. Should we act on behalf of duty? Should we act on behalf of utilitarianism? They all, well, a lot of them will conflict.
Yeah.
So we would have to apply very, very strong processing or a very strong algorithm for making these decisions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I don't want to delve too far away from the transhuman question, but I think the question that you raise is one that converges very cleanly with the transhuman question, whether or not it's the way forward. And that is whether or not transhumanism is good on the individual level or whether or not it's good on the universal. So I want to hear Arsha's thoughts on this one first.
I think it would be good for... It would be better in universal levels than individual levels in long term, I would say.
Your explanation, please.
Yeah, so... If we're not thinking about like human beings as the only species we're thinking about, just exploring the universe and enhancing our capabilities would add benefit to the whole nature, which also can lead to us, extinct ourselves. But there's a question that we've raised, that if humans are good for this planet, and we've been talking about this, in individual levels, I would say still it benefits humanity in a long term if, again, if we align it in a right way. Bringing back to the point that we talked about, like adaptability to these tools is like an enhance or die situation, which is like a transhumanism angle, I would say. Some sort of like Nick Bostrom angle. He always talks about the fact that we have different flaws in nature as human, even in other species as well. We have like design flaws. So that's why we should be open to explore and using BCIs, and we have to be open to like transhumanism angle. It's a hard techno optimism transhumanist angle, but I think it's the way to go if we're thinking universally.
Interesting. Okay, Perry.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so you mentioned I forgot the full quote, but us being a parasite to technology.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Butler's
Machines.
vision of
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, what happens if I say that's not a bad thing? Let me explain. Imagine we create this silicon organism, this other machine-like human, better than us, better morality, whatever, and it significantly decreases the suffering in humans, the world, the universe.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be better? What would stop us? And we would be that parasite latching on. We will still be living a better life, actually. A better life. Yes, we're dependent.
Well, I think Butler's argument was that the betterment would be short-lived and that we would be both superseded and then eventually culled by that machine, because in the same way that a parasite is a negative relationship, it's not a symbiotic one, the machine would want to turn around and rid itself of that which kind of pulled it down. As to your question is whether or not, if we were to create a silicon inorganic life form, whether or not that would be optimal for the universe, I think this comes back to the question of human dignity, and this comes back to the question of human value. And I think on both the atheist and the religious front, we come up against the problem that if you follow an atheist's thought process, then we are the universe organized itself into a moment where we are able to, in an organic way, reflect on the universe, reflect on ourselves, which is a very unique position. That organic, natural element to who and what we are, I think, needs to have a certain level of import attached. Because if the universe, let's say, hadn't come to this position, hadn't come to this inflection point where it's looking back on itself, then we would never have the ability to create this thing. We would still be the less conscious, less reflective animals that we came from. And if you approach it from a religious background, this question becomes even clearer. And that question is one of who made us? And if we've been made in the way that we have been, with albeit tremendous suffering and pain, our ability still to love and our ability to be curious and our ability to self-reflect is a gift that places us above the other animals. Now, as to whether or not being a parasite is such a bad thing, that relationship, it's not a symbiosis.
I would almost reject that. I've got a point that probably would relate to the next question.
Are we saying that the relationship would not be a parasitic one but a symbiotic one?
Almost so.
Almost, okay. That changes it slightly, because I think symbiotic relationships are not bad ones. Mm-hmm. Obviously, like that's the difference between a symbiosis and a parasitical relationship. But still, instead of working to eradicate our woes and working to eradicate our suffering and working to eradicate our limitations, at the moment, the transhumanist approach seems to be one which works to create something that kind of bypasses that individual struggle. And Simon Sinek on an excellent podcast, Diary of a CEO, discussed the beauty, and we're going to talk about AI and art in future episodes, so please tune in for that. But he discusses the value of the excruciating agony which goes into the development of art, of culture, of tradition and language. And we can't turn around and just forego that agony and work for a bypass. We need to go through that agony to learn more about ourselves. And I think that these tools would mean that we knew more about the tools and we would know more about certain parts of ourselves. But it does seem to be a shortcut, which shortcuts are not always bad, but shortcuts often come with their own consequence. And I would be concerned with what we missed along the way. If we didn't proceed along the path of the organic life, perfecting itself in an organic way, I would be concerned what lessons we missed.
Perry, did you have... I cut you off.
No. The thing that you asked, that whether transhumanism is going to be good for selfish people, or how you put it in a better words. I'm sorry, my English is not good. I think everything that humans do is selfish. Everything that we do is selfish. We sacrifice ourselves for other people to feel good about ourselves. I don't know, give money to charity because we want to feel good about ourselves. We do everything, we get disciplined because of ourselves, because we want the feedback, or we want to feel better, or we want to... Everything that we do is basically selfish. So it's going to be like a bigger picture. It's going to be a bigger picture that all those selfish needs will be met.
I think that we need to be careful when we turn around and say that everything we do is selfish. I think you're right that everything that we do has an element of selfishness and self-preservation, for sure. But selfishness is negative. And the desire to perfect ourselves or feel good about ourselves and the pursuit of happiness and survival, I don't think is necessarily a selfish one. I think that in its extremes, it becomes selfish. And this brings me, I share your belief that I don't think there's such a thing as true altruism, because even at that pinnacle of not just sacrificing yourself in terms of your time, but sacrificing your earthly body, let's say that you die for a loved one, even that I don't believe is fully altruistic, because either you are doing this to both feel good about what you're doing, or if you're religious, to please your creator. Like there are things to be said that, even though in many ways it seems logically incompatible to sacrifice yourself, there are many reasons why it actually serves you. But I would be careful to call that still selfish, because I would say that that is a fairly selfless action. To sacrifice yourself for a loved one, or to sacrifice yourself for an idea, to sacrifice yourself for values like Charlie Kirk did, I wouldn't turn around and say that that's selfish. For sure, it has benefits to his legacy and to his family and to all of us. But that action is still one of great discipline and sacrifice.
What defines the line between being selfish and being selfless? Everything we do is to feel good.
That's difficult to address, and we're going to get into semantics and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I would say when doing acts that benefit the self, even marginally, should not be reduced down to selfishness. Yes, there are, like you said, aspects of self-preservation, but the ratios are different.
I think you've hit the nail on the head right there. It's in the ratio. How much does this benefit you versus how much does it benefit someone else?
Okay.
And if it benefits someone else or other people more than it benefits you, then it is more a selfless act than it is a selfish one.
Okay.
And this is I know we're delving
Fair
into
point.
semantics. Daniel's right, and I don't want to take away from the transhumanist discussion. But
So we should go back to your point of the relationship between, like, is it the
Man and
parasite
machine,
or
yeah.
not? Because I've raised the point in, I think, the last podcast, EP4, and we talked about like the fact that we could like implement like a maternal instinct to like all these things.
Yeah.
And be like
Damn.
like using the oversight approach. So they can actually parent us in a way that they protect us and educate us in a way that we can educate ourselves. So that would be like a symbiosis. But what's your thoughts?
So that swiftly moves on to the next question, which
Yeah.
is, if neural implants allow brain AI symbiosis, who owns your thoughts? It's crazy how we would actually come onto that.
Yeah, and I think that just for those who are very interested in the exact nature of your question around a parasitical symbiotic balance of man and machine, we will discuss more about that later. But this, I think, is definitely a question which should be addressed. And let's start with Arsha on the ownership of thought. Again, I'm sorry I'm starting with you, but we've had many discussions around the free market and exactly what financial control means. So,
Yeah. So I don't think our thoughts in the current market, I don't think our thoughts are going to be controlled by startups or companies in a way that if we implement, like, for instance, Neuralink, I was discussing this with you that we could just use the data for research, but we own our thoughts in a way that we can like consent. We can like give consent to companies to use our data in some sort of restricted way, I would say. It's like when you go to hospital, you don't sell your soul, or it's not like they own your soul. They just help you to go through something. So I think we could frame this.
Because they can't. If they would have, if they could.
well,
That's a hard one.
Well, no, let's finish what you're saying, Arsha.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we could frame it like this way. So your thoughts are yours, and that's like full stop. But the way that they use the data in your thoughts, that's the problem.
And let's be clear here that Arsha is talking about a rigorous legal and ethical framework implemented to ensure that your thoughts are your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because I'll mention in a sec my concerns, but
What
Perry, you jumped in.
Yeah, I think the second that we get chipped in the brain or get chipped at all, we will not own the data of what we're thinking. We will just if the company doesn't use it, which definitely will, someone will hack it. Someone will. It's always something. And I mean, a few years back they thought blockchain wasn't hackable, but it turns out it is. Like, everything is hackable. So even if the company doesn't own your data from your brain, what you think, someone else will, and it's
someone else could.
Someone else could, and if they could, a lot of people would.
Yeah.
Just because it's hackable doesn't mean that's the end of it. It's the dance between the cybersecurity dance between hacking and then securing and then hacking, securing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it would be that. It's like I went into Apple before I bought my iPhone. I was like, does Apple store the facial recognition? They claimed no. So it could be like that. It's just stored within. I know. But it could just be stored within the hardware or however, right? So It reads, stores, it's only local.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, then we'll go back into seeing like ethical structures and whatever.
I'd be interested to see exactly how they don't store that,
Yeah,
because
I
of
like to
course
see too.
every time that you use your iPhone to log on, I'm not actually, I think Samsung's slightly different, but your iPhone uses infrared that captures depth of facial structure.
Oh.
So there's a model against which it's being referenced constantly, and I guess the question is, where is that model being stored?
Yeah.
How can you guarantee that it's not accessible? And thanks to the Communications Act of 1994 in the States, which I referenced previously, every electronics provider at the time was mandated to create easy access for intelligence and security agencies to access that data for national security purposes. But of course, as we've seen, the public good is certainly debatable, and who decides? So, yeah, I who do you think, Daniel, is going to own your thoughts?
So I'd like to address one thing. So there's a parasite. I really don't like the term, but it is what it is. There's a parasite called Toxoplasma gondii. Search it up. So essentially what happens, it's a parasite that infects a mammalian brain. So yes, it can indeed infect our brain. It's a chronic infection in the brain. It like literally forms cysts in the neurons,
Sure.
and it pretty much replicates the neurons, and it literally lasts your entire lifetime.
Sure.
And then the question is, oh, okay.
Don't give them any ideas, Daniel.
Who's gonna? Is it the parasite that's changing my thoughts? Are these my thoughts? So is it the parasite? Is it me? And like you can say it's both. You can say it's just the parasite. If it's the parasitic needs, or if it's the human needs, it's tough, really tough. We don't know how to fully like address that. Scarily enough, it can actually be passed down as well.
Okay.
So back to the evolution point earlier on. Yes, maybe transhumanism will provide a benefit to the human or humans having that thing, but will it actually get passed down? Because if we benefit and we can have greater resources and offspring and reproductive power, then sure, great. But can my kids have that? Maybe not. So then they would probably have to chip as well, unless we find a way to implement a chip that goes down through the pipeline of evolution and
some
genes.
sort of biological programming.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is the same thing with a chip inside me. Is it the chip? Is it me? Maybe it's both. It really depends on that initial like spark. It's going to be hard to address, but I would say it's a symbiosis at that point. If the parasite's in your head, you can't take it out. You take it out, you die, unless we find a way of taking it out safely. But you live like a normal person almost. You wouldn't even realize. Yeah. So
What
I
are your
would say-
thoughts and concerns?
My thoughts. I have come a long way in the past few years, insofar as previously I did very little research for myself over following the money. And the more that I've started to do just that and follow the money as best that I can, the more that I've seen that actually it is the people who own it and the people who invest in it and who have shares in it that control the company and the company's direction. Now, as to any sort of transhuman technology, who's going to own your thoughts? So I guess we're talking solely about brain-computer interfaces, rather internal or external. It will depend on your ability to shut it down. It will depend on your own dependency, whether if it's internal, that's going to be a very interesting question because just because you turn the power off, the connections are still there. Mm-hmm. And if someone can provide some source of electromagnetic force, they can force a circuit to act in a certain way. If it's external and you can take it off, I think it's more likely that you will have ownership of your thoughts when you're not connected. When you are connected, though, I think that we need to approach our data, which our thoughts will become at that point, as a physical asset, one which needs the utmost protection in the same way that you would protect your house as best as you possibly could. By using these technologies, you need to be aware that there is a financial transaction going on, and they will be profiting off your purchase of such a chip. But you need to then also know whether or not they are going to be profiting off your data, because there's a very, very, very large market for data, be that the surveillance capital market that we see now or the advertising market. And Altered Carbon has this very interesting concept of basically optical advertising, where I can't remember if it's actually a glasses replacement. It's completely
Contact lens?
Yeah, whether or not it's sorry guys. Whether or not it's a contact lens or it is a chip which is influencing your optical nerve, you could be fed advertising.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Like just directly.
Damn.
And if it's a brain computer interface, it's not just being fed optically to you, but they're able to influence your hormones as well. And so much research has gone into advertising and how to do so effectively, because if you can sell your product, you can profit. Fantastic. But so much of the research has gone into hormonal manipulation, like what colors and what different themes will produce within your body to get you to purchase that product. Is it going to make you feel happy, comfortable, calm, confident? Or is it going to inspire fear, which is going to promote your spending in defense? If you could directly influence hormone release in the brain, then it's a whole advertising becomes a whole different ball game.
That's like advertising on steroids.
That's well, it's no, but at that point, I would argue it's manipulation, because if you can read a person's thoughts,
control.
you know where they are at the time when you're delivering the advertising, and you have the formula to provide them exactly the response that you wish them to receive. Then yeah, I would argue it's manipulation
At that point, we're
and
all
control.
puppets.
So this is where I think that if brain-computer interfaces, certainly the chip type rather than the external type, if those become implemented across the species, I think that the ownership of thoughts, that will depend wholly on people's ability to protect themselves in a cyber secure fashion. But ultimately, if you can build a wall, that wall can be breached. So your thoughts will never be safe. And I think that irrespective of thought ownership, if you can't fully protect those thoughts are no longer secure. And I think that raises a large question. And on that happy note, I think it's time to end. I think we've run out of time. So I want to thank everyone who's tuned in and listened. There's so much more that can be discussed. God knows that we didn't even get through half the questions we had for today.
Yeah, such a deep topic.
It is. And I would highly recommend anyone who is asking themselves these questions to be going and doing the research for yourself. Don't take anything that we have said here verbatim. Make sure you do your own research, cross-reference what we've spoken about today, and make sure when it comes time to make that decision that you make one as informed as you physically can.
Yeah. Share your thoughts with us as well.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in.